The golden grass of Serengeti didn't just sway, it breathed. Elara, a red-hued deer with a coat the color dried clay and eyes like polished obsidian, stood frozen. The air was thick, smelling of coming rain and the metallic tang of dried blood. Below a jagged outcropping of granite, something whimpered, a sound too high-pitched for a predator, yet too rhythmic for a bird. Elara should have run. Every fiber of her evolutionary history screamed at her to flee the scent of feline musk. Instead, she stepped forward. Her hooves clicked against the stones, a delicate sound that felt like thunder in the silence. There, tucked into a crevice of shadows, were two bundles of charcoal fur. They were no larger than melons, their eyes still milky blue and unfocused. Panther cubs. Their mother was nowhere. The surrounding grass was trampled, marked by the heavy, dragging scent of a much larger scavenger, hyenas. The cubs were shivering, their tiny paws kneading the air in search of warmth that had gone cold hours ago. Elara's ears twitched, scanning the horizon for the silhouette of a predator. The sun was dipping low, casting long, skeletal shadows across the plain. The temperature dropped sharply, and a biting wind began to whip through her fur. One cub let out a thin, raspy cry. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated need. In an act that defied the very foundation of the food chain, Elara did not turn away. She knelt, her large, warm body settled over the shivering cubs, her thick coat acting as a thermal blanket against the encroaching frost. She could feel their tiny hearts racing against her ribs, a frantic drumming that slowly, eventually, began to sync with her own steady pulse. Chapter 2, The Season of Shadows. The following months were a masterclass in impossible survival. Elara led her strange brood through the dense acacia thickets, where the thorns grew as long as a finger and the ground was a carpet of dry, crunching leaves. She taught them the art of silence, not for hunting, but for hiding. Every morning, the forest woke with a symphony of warnings. The damp earth underfoot felt like sponge, holding the moisture of the morning mist that clung to Elara's hide in shimmering beads. The cubs, whom the narrative identifies as Kale and Naira, were growing. Their fur was darkening into a sleek, midnight velvet. They didn't understand why their mother ate the sweet shoots of the whistling thorn tree, but they mimicked her movements, pouncing on grasshoppers while she watched with vigilant, nervous eye. One afternoon, the first great danger arrived. A pack of wild dogs, their coats mottled and their eyes glowing with manic hunger, caught the scent of the deer. The dogs didn't see the panthers. They saw a lone, vulnerable meal. They circled, their yaps piercing the heavy midday heat. Elara stood her ground, her head low, her hooves kicking up clouds of red dust that tasted like copper in the back of her throat. Just as the lead dog lunged, two black shadows exploded from the tall grass. Kale and Naira, barely adolescents but already possessing the raw, terrifying speed of their lineage, didn't hunt. They defended, they didn't kill. But the sight of two panthers flanking a deer was so unnatural, so hauntingly wrong, that the dogs broke rank and vanished into shimmering heat haze. Elara trembled, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the cubs returned to nuzzle her neck, their tongues rough like sandpaper against her skin. Chapter 3, The Trial of Water and Fire. The great drought turned the world into a kiln. The riverbeds were nothing but cracked puzzles of gray mud, and the air felt like breathing ash. Elara's ribs began to show, her once vibrant coat dulling under a layer of fine, white dust. She knew of a hidden spring deep within the canyon, but to get there, they had to cross the territory of the Old King, a massive, battle-scarred leopard who ruled the watering holes with an iron claw. As they descended into the canyon, the smell of stagnant water and rotting vegetation grew heavy. The humidity clung to them like a wet shroud. Then the ambush came. The Old King dropped from a leadwood tree, a heavy, golden blur aimed directly at Elara's throat. He was a creature of pure muscle and instinct, but he hadn't accounted for the shadows that followed the deer. Kale, now a full-grown male with shoulders like granite, intercepted the leopard midair. The sound was horrific, a guttural explosion of snarls, the tearing of fur, and a heavy thud of bodies hitting the sun-baked earth. Naira joined the fray, her movements a blur of obsidian grace. They didn't fight as panthers usually do, for territory or food. They fought with protective fury that was almost human. The old king, overwhelmed by the dual assault and the sheer confusion of the situation, retreated into the shadows of the rocks, his face bloodied. Elara stood by the water's edge, her legs shaking as her son stood guard, their eyes fixed on the darkness, refusing to drink until their mother had finished. Chapter 4. The truth goes viral. Years passed, and the legend of the ghost mother spread to the fringes of the forest. Scientists and photographers began to catch glimpses of an impossible sight, an elderly, graying deer walking calmly through the tall grass, flanked by two of the most apex predators in the region. One day, a high-altitude drone captured the footage that would eventually stun the world. The scene was a clearing during the golden hour, when the light turns the world into an oil painting. Elara was old now, her movement stiff with arthritis, her eyes clouded with cataracts. She was resting near a fallen log, the bark peeling away in long, leathery strips. A group of young, wandering lions had spotted her. They moved in with the cold efficiency of the savannah. They saw a dying deer, an easy mark. The drone footage showed the lions closing in a golden semicircle of death. But as they prepared to spring, the log next to the deer moved. Kale and Naira, who had been perfectly camouflaged in the deep shadows of the timber, stood up. They didn't roar. They simply stepped in front of Elara. The visual was staggering. Two black panthers, symbols of lethal power, acting as a living shield for a creature they should have eaten a decade ago. The lions, sensing a fight that would cost them too much, backed away slowly. The world watched as Kale turned back to the deer and gently licked the top of her head, a gesture of profound, silent gratitude that transcended species. Chapter 5. The Eternal Return. The end came during a quiet twilight, as the first stars began to pierce the indigo sky. The air was cool, smelling of night-blooming jasmine and the damp earth of the rainy season. Elara lay beneath the same granite outcropping where she had found the cubs years ago. Her breathing was shallow, a soft wheeze that blended with the rustle of the leaves. Kale and Naira stayed with her. They didn't hunt that night. They didn't patrol their borders. They sat like statues of black marble, their tails twitching occasionally to swat away the flies that hovered in the heavy air. Nature is often viewed as a place of cold red teeth and claws, but in those final hours, there was only a deep, reverent stillness. When Elara finally let out her last, rattling breath, the panthers didn't leave. They stayed for 2 days, guarding the body of the mother who had defied her own nature to save theirs. When they finally moved on, disappearing into the emerald depths of the forest, they didn't just leave behind a carcass. They left behind a legacy. The truth that went viral wasn't just about a deer and panthers. It was a realization that the most powerful force in the wild isn't the hunger to kill, but the instinct to protect those who once protected you. The cycle of the forest continued, but the shadows under the trees seemed a little more protective, a little more sacred.